Hello and welcome to Veterans of the Valley. I'm Tom Turbyville. There are thousands of military jobs involved with fighting the war in Iraq, but Captain Mark White, A&M class of 2003, had one of the more fascinating deployments as a member of Alpha Company 111th Engineer Battalion. It had nothing to do with engineering, but everything to do with security for the constant flow of generals, presidents, senators, media, song and dance folks, and other assorted VIPs visiting the country. The detail that goes into a seemingly simple visit to Iraq by a dignitary may surprise you, but it was his job to make sure that there were few, if any, surprises for the guest. Please welcome Captain Mark White to Veterans of the Valley. Fascinating job. When you first went over there, did you realize that that's what you were going to do, that was going to be your deployment, that you were going to do that?
We knew about, for sure, about 3 months before we were going. And so then we started our preparation, and we had several exercises, and we spent 3 weeks at Fort Polk, Louisiana doing a mission rehearsal exercise, and that's all we focused on. The thing about it is that you train for it a certain way, and then it's not really what you think it's going to be until you get there.
Right.
And so we had about a 10-day time period where we would watch. At first we just watched the people that we were taking over for, and then they would watch us just make sure we're doing it right.
Right.
And a huge part of it is just building contacts and learning routes and ways to go, because you spend so much time out throughout the country that you got to know where you're going.
It doesn't surprise me that that's the way you prepared for it, because smooth running operation is exactly what you did. That was part of your job. Now, you all were based near Baghdad, right outside the airport. Is that right?
Yes, sir, at the Victory Base compound.
And now there was a hotel involved, which is sort of the main hotel. Talk about that hotel and what it used to be and what it was used for.
The hotel was, we used it to house the senior level dignitaries. We had, I think, 9 suites. They're all nice, had marble showers, flushing toilets, all the things that were really nice to have in Iraq. Before that, prior to that, it was used as a kind of a weekend brothel for Saddam and his fellow Baathists.
So I guess it's kind of a fascinating place, right?
It's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It had its own private dining room, a lakeside view.
Yeah.
Not the typical things you get in Iraq.
No. Now, but your missions didn't really involve a whole lot there. You were mainly out in the field. Talk about what your job was. Like I say, it's very fascinating, and whenever a dignitary came to Iraq, that's when you went to work.
Exactly. We would know, sometimes weeks in advance, sometimes days in advance, when someone was coming. And from the point that they were approved to come to Iraq, we would get an itinerary, and we'd flesh it out, make sure it would work, make sure it was functional, and then execute it. From the time that person landed in Iraq, and it didn't necessarily have to be in Baghdad. They could land down south in Najaf or up in Mosul. We'd pick them up and meet them there, and we were responsible for their security, their logistics, their travel, everything that encompassed their time in Iraq was what was our responsibility. Ultimately, we focused the most on security because that's what was paramount for our mission to be a success.
Right, right. Who came? Who were you in charge of? What kind of people? Name some titles and some people. Who were they?
It varied from just low level to in the full scheme of things, low level staff, general officers from the Pentagon and the Joint Chiefs, all the way up to the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, the President of Poland. The Koreans had a contingent there, so they would have South Koreans would have a lot of their senior military, all the military military defense people from other countries that were part of the coalition.
Right.
And then as well as the MWR, the morale welfare people like Toby Keith, Rascal Flatts, Jessica Simpson, just all kinds of people, and then dance teams, cheerleading teams.
Right.
And then lots of senators and congressmen and women would come over.
Now you were there from December to December 2004 to 2005.
Yes, sir.
You were there for that year. So you mentioned the senators. I mean, some of the high-profile people that we've heard of, just about all of them came through because they wanted to be there, and it was good politically to say they'd been to Iraq, right? Yes,
sir. There's a nice little stipulation. If you spend 1 day in a war zone, you get tax-free for that month. So I don't want to say that was their agenda, but I'm sure it's not a bad thing because some would spend 1 day in Iraq.
Right.
But yeah, they would come, and I kind of judge my impression of a senator on what their itinerary was. If they just came and just talked to the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defense, Minister of Interior of Iraq, that's one thing. But some guys and women would take time to make sure that they met their delegates. They would be sure that they had a breakfast with everyone that's in their district. And so, I was fortunate enough. The representative from the Abilene area where the unit was based, he came and had a barbecue dinner with us.
Right.
And
right.
he just happened to be with Tom Osborne on that trip when Tom Osborne was a senator for Nebraska. So it was a neat trip.
It was indeed. Now the officers, they would be pretty much serve as bodyguards. I mean, they would stay close to the VIP, and you as an officer, that would be your role?
Yes, sir, exactly. We would label ourselves the escort officer, and then we'd have the PSD, the Protective Services Detachment or Detail, and that would be the enlisted guys. So it would be the outer ring that would provide the security, a little distance out, whereas the escort officer, the officers, would have to be no further than one door away. We'd always make sure that we're right there, close enough that, if it happened and if harm came in their way, we could grab them, snatch them, throw them in a truck, and get out of there, or get on the helicopter, wherever we needed to do to get away from the threat.
Tell you what, this is a story that can really best be told in pictures. And Mark has quite a few photographs that he took from his year in Iraq. And let's go to just a few of them right now. We have several pictures. Here's the first, get Mark to comment on each one. That's the battalion, or that's the unit?
That's the company, yes, that's the Alpha Company. And this is at Fort Hood prior to us getting our desert uniforms. We spent 3 months at Fort Hood training, going over just basic combat skills, making sure everybody's refreshed, getting certified on our combat lifesaver skills. And we had a detachment come down. We worked on advanced driving skills, how to pit a car and how to run someone off the road properly without hurting them.
Now, if I'm right, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's you sitting right behind the flag. Is that right?
That is, yes.
Okay.
Sir. That's me right there.
That's right. I recognized you right there in the front row. Okay, let's move on.
This is me at the NATO compound. NATO had a role there to kind of set up the schools and help educate some of the people within the government there. And so they had a nice compound, and the significance of this is one of the first times I saw grass in Iraq. There's not a whole lot of it out there, and so I was happy to see it.
Looks like a country club setting.
It did. It was real nice.
Yeah, muster.
This is a pretty good turnout if you think about the amount of civilians and military people in Iraq. They also had another muster downtown Baghdad, but we had the largest one in the country. Also of note in here is his current Vice President of Student Affairs for A&M, General Weber, when he was in Baghdad as the Multinational Forces Iraq Chief of Staff.
Mm-hmm. That's a great shot. That is.
And that's the Multinational Forces Iraq headquarters on Victory Base. This is kind of the view off our back porch at our office building and compound, and the hotel as well. So we got and a lot of our meetings would take place over at that building, just because that's where some of the senior military leaders were at and where they needed to meet with.
Now, is this a building here that was obviously it used to be something else, or was it built specifically for the war?
It was one of Saddam's weekend getaways, one of those little palaces. On the other side that you can't see it, but there's 2 bridges that go out to it, and the coalition blew up those bridges when they came in, and then they said, we met lots of people that came in that were on that initial invasion, talked about how much money was just in that building alone, and they had to take truckloads of it out because that's where Saddam was stashing some of his stuff.
Well, I'm glad he built us such nice office buildings.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful Iraq at sunset, right?
Yes, sir. Just something to add that maybe a war-torn country, but it certainly has its beautiful moments. This is on the other side of the lake from the front view of our office, and that's one of the intelligence buildings. They had several other little compounds over by it.
It's a lookout tower of some sort, I guess.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, it's actually just a part of that. It's kind of just scenic.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
Go ahead. This is me. I was an escort officer for Donald Rumsfeld. One is, I think it was April 11th was when this trip was, and this was right at the airfield where the helicopters took off, right next to the embassy. We're right beside the embassy, and he's right there back there talking to General Casey, who was the force commander of Iraq at the time, and they spent a lot of time together, and I got the I got the pleasure of being the escort officer for him.
That had to have been quite an honor, really.
It was. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Right. If you've ever wanted to put yourself in a helicopter over Iraq during wartime and looking down on Baghdad, this is what you see, right?
That's what you see. This is just a little part of downtown Baghdad. Just flying over it. You can see how close the houses are, how close the communities are.
Now, you talked about some of the celebrities were there. This is a sample. Who are we looking at?
Yeah, Jessica Simpson and Nick Lachey, and then their tour manager. I don't know his name, but
Yeah, and their tour manager.
And
Yeah.
they, you know, they,
Tour manager looks like he wants to be somewhere else.
yeah, most
Yeah.
of them did.
That's right.
You know,
They're not married anymore, right?
no,
Yeah.
no, this is
Looks like they were fighting right then, as a matter of fact.
it's a yes, sir. And they would go, you know, a lot of the celebrity types would go from place, you know, from base to base, would fly them around, and they would put on a show, and they'd have very aggressive, very busy schedules, and
Right.
they'd be really tired at the end, but they were always very grateful for what you
Sure.
did. And we were thankful for them taking the time to come over and provide some entertainment.
Absolutely.
This is north up in the town of Mosul, which is close to Turkey, there's grass up there and it's green up there, and it's a lot milder temperature. It's always pleasant to go up there, and this is right at the airfield. We're waiting for our helicopters to come pick us up and take us back down to Baghdad outside of Mosul.
Okay. And we've got, this is a small village in Iraq.
Yes, sir. You know, around the countryside, there's just these random villages. They'll have, you know, one road going in, one road going out, and we'd fly over them, you know, throughout our trips around Iraq, and we'd throw out soccer balls or candy or, you know, just
Right.
something because they're isolated villages, and the kids would just come storming out of the buildings whenever they heard the helicopters, and they'd wave and
Yeah.
you know, do something for them.
Wow. We've got some more pictures. Mark has brought a couple of things, and this is it's one of your armor jackets, is that right?
Yes, yeah, this is our body armor we'd wear pretty much everywhere, and it doesn't have the plates in it. We had to turn the plates back in Kuwait, but so it's fairly heavy, but it provides sufficient protection from any kind of you know, small caliber weapon, unless you got shot in the face.
That's right. Fortunately, you wore it, but you didn't need it, right?
Exactly.
That's good.
I was happy to have that.
That's a good thing. A lot of the media, sometimes it would come over. Would you be on a detail with some of the media also that would be over there? I know you mentioned Peter Jennings not long before he passed away was there, and you got to spend some time with him.
I did. There was, especially around the election time, when that was, you know, the country is at such a volatile point, and the success of those elections would determine, you know, where the country would move forward, and there's such a big stake in the U.S. interest in there. All the media would be there, including you know, Peter Jennings, who was, you know, we'd forgot about until we looked back later on that he'd passed away. You know, I think
Right.
about
It was in
a month
August.
or-
He had passed away, and I looked it up. He had passed away in August of that year, the year August of 2005.
Yes, sir, and that was.
Right.
He was, you know, he's a real guy, real easygoing, real mild tempered. He liked to come talk to the guys, just talk to the lower enlisted, and just, you know, talk about the day and whatnot. Other people from the media talked to you a little bit about Geraldo being there, staying
Yeah,
at the hotel.
kind of a party guy.
Kind of a party guy. Had a little stuff in the room. He's nice enough to leave back for everyone else.
Right.
And then General McCaffrey, General Wayne Downing.
Right.
And then you'd see all the Fox News people would be over there.
You and
Martha
McCaffrey
Raddatz.
got pretty tight, right?
We
Yeah.
did. Me and I got to know General Barry McCaffrey very well. Spent 11 days straight with him, and we went all over the country, everywhere. Just me and him in our detail. And I ended up, you know, keeping in touch with him later on. He's a really good guy. He's been so involved in the military and U.S. government for so long. He has so many stories, you know. And
Right.
I just really enjoyed being around him and hearing what he had to say. And then it was neat to see how like General Petraeus, General Vine, some of the senior leaders would look up to him so much, and really cared about to hear what he had to say. You know, he spent a lot of time with General Casey over over his house.
I want people to understand that when you got an itinerary for a VIP that was coming, you'd actually go through this itinerary twice, because before they ever got there, you would go where they were going to go just to check everything out, check security, and then you'd actually be on the mission, right?
Oh yes, sir. It was imperative that we fleshed out any kinks that could possibly arise and make sure that we had a contingency plan for the whole itinerary. The day before, if possible, we would run through it, you know, start to finish, and then, you know, we have a big briefing, make sure that everybody knew exactly what the role was, because there's so many places within Iraq where you could get stopped. There could be a hiccup or security you need to worry about. And so we'd make sure we had everything covered, and we were fortunate to not really have any issues throughout the whole year.
Right, right. None that you could plan. Now, I know that there were weather problems, sandstorms and things like that would mess up the original itinerary. Right?
Yeah, we couldn't plan for the weather. You know, we would do our best, but if a sandstorm came in, and it would make visibility, you know, zero. You'd have to have a hard time seeing your hand in front of your face. Helicopters can't fly in that. And it's also it's a big time for insurgents to kind of put out their their roadside bombs and things like that. So it's not safe at that time, and so you'd try to have some kind of backup plan. It depends upon where you're at. Now sometimes you may just get stuck out in the middle of nowhere at a remote location, and you're just going to have to do. I felt bad because sometimes that local commander, that lieutenant colonel, will get stuck with this 4-star general for 3 or 4 hours longer than he wanted. He'd have a set plan for what he had to do and what he had to show, and then he's just kind of stuck on the spot, not knowing what to do. All right, well, you want to see the hallway?
Yeah.
Here's the hallway.
We saw the picture of you on the detail with Secretary Rumsfeld. That was a little bit different than most. I guess a lot of them came, they had an itinerary, they pretty much stuck to it, but this guy was the boss. I guess his plan changed hour to hour sometimes.
Oh, definitely.
Right?
We'd started video teleconferences, about 3 weeks in advance at least, between me, the embassy, and back to the Department of Defense and his people, and that is almost a daily thing. If I want to change this or change that, and then a big thing for him was wanting to go see Mr. Barzani, who was the president of the Kurds, and he wanted to see him, and Barzani wanted to talk to Donald Rumsfeld as well. And Kurds have a big interest in the country, but the big thing was deciding on where to meet at. Mr. Rumsfeld, Secretary Rumsfeld, wanted to meet him down in Iraq and Baghdad because that's where he was going to be at anyway for some meetings of their Senate type place. Mr. Barzani didn't want to see him there. He wanted to see him at his private compound.
Right.
And then that just created a whole litany of issues because his compound is 7 hours north of Baghdad in the hills away from everything else with no room to, Secretary Rumsfeld, we had six helicopters and another 4 Apache gunships flying around. It's a pretty big deal.
Right.
And he has such a big entourage. And so you take this little bitty compound in this apocalypse now scene of all these helicopters coming in, and it was interesting nonetheless. But it came out fine. They got to have their meeting. Everything worked out, and we just flew Mr. Rumsfeld out of a different location than where we initially planned.
Let's go to some more photographs right now that Captain Mark White has supplied to us here. We'll go look at them here.
This is up in Kirkuk. This is actually Jerry Patterson, who's the Veterans Land Board Commissioner of Texas, and an Aggie grad and
Right.
Vietnam vet. He actually came with the VFW when they had a contingency come, and he was a proud Aggie, and we found another proud Aggie up in Kirkuk near the oil fields, and we all took a picture.
That's great. That's a great picture.
This
I know
is-
Jerry. He's a good man.
I really appreciate his time.
Right.
This is in Balad. This is where you see a lot of things about that main hospital. That's where it's at. This is actually one of the Predator drones, which provides it's an unmanned aerial vehicle that provides a lot of reconnaissance, a lot of intelligence, and also notice a missile attached to it in case it needs to take care of something en route.
Okay, that's quite a weapon. This is an outstanding photograph.
This is the landing pad up in Mosul, where there was only 4 spots, and that's where we parked the 4 helicopters. And that's actually on a mountain, and I always like going to Mosul. It's always real nice, and they had good food there, which is what I judge bases on, is how their food was. But you catch a lot of turbulence. It'd be when you come off, if you're on that last helicopter and you had to run down that line to get out of the flight line, you'd feel a lot of wind. So it was always
So
interesting.
you'd gotten out of your chopper to take this picture, is that right?
I had, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. This is some of our company here in right outside our little quarters on Victory Base. Just we'd make a lot of plaques and to tell people thank you that helped us out over in the Force headquarters or the Corps headquarters.
Mm-hmm. Good picture.
This is me re-enlisting. He's a first sergeant leader now. At the time he was an E6, but I was re-enlisting him into the Army for another 6 years. It was a kind of a pleasure for me because when I was enlisted before, and he was actually my squad leader while I was in Bosnia. I mean, as a 19-year-old kid, he made me roll around in the dirt, roll around the grass, and then here 6 years later, I had the opportunity and the pleasure to re-enlist him in the Army, and he's been a great person to bounce things off of throughout the years.
Good picture.
Here's
Toby
a-
Keith concert?
Toby Keith, yes sir, he came down, put on a big show. I think they actually cut to this during the CMA Awards, and he sang a song, and he did a full concert there for us at the Victory Base, and that was a big deal. As you can see, everybody wanted to come out there, and they wanted to pile in and get as close as they could. He put on a great show. It was a nice thing to kind of get your mind off, what's
Sure.
going on around you. You just kind of for a minute, for 30 minutes, for an hour, wherever it was, you get to just kind of relax and enjoy a little bit of country music and someone they appreciate. He's got some great songs.
Now, Mark, you know that there's veterans watching this show right now, World War II veterans that are looking at this picture, and they're thinking back to the time that they sat and watched Bob Hope entertain.
Yeah, yes,
right?
sir.
So this is the same thing. Just fast forward, and you've got other entertainers doing the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's great. It's a good picture. It's a good one.
And here's me and a couple other Aggies, Casey Tutt and their fellows that both I think class of '99, class of '97. And there was a few of us, and we get together when we could, and share old A&M memories. Talk about the game that week. I used to get up at 3 in the morning and listen to Dave South on a radio broadcast. I'd find a computer,
Yeah.
and get on the internet and listen. And these guys do the same. And this is over at their compound at Camp Slayer, which is right beside where I was at, and another man-made lake. We get together.
All right. You mentioned Dave, of course. Mark and I both work on the football broadcast. We have a lot of fun doing that. This was not your first deployment overseas. When you were 19 years old, you were in Bosnia.
Yes, sir.
Talk briefly about that deployment.
At that time, we'd start off the same company, actually, Alpha Company 111th. We're going to be supposed to do engineering mission to begin with. We were going to help with demining operations, help the Bosnians go ahead and remove mines as part of their agreement to do with some of the conventions at the Dayton Accords. And about a week into our mission rehearsal exercise, they said, "No, you're going to do base defense. You're going to." All right, so we're like, okay. So I worked at the main gate, the vehicle gate there, to get traffic in and out. It was kind of interesting.
You're a lowly gate guy.
Lowly gate guy, just working the gate, searching cars, searching people, taking their alcohol away.
Not a popular gate guy all the time.
Not a popular job, no. But I learned a lot, and it just so happens I was selected Soldier of the Year, S47, Task Force Eagle Soldier of the Year, and that's ultimately led me to become an officer. Was after that time, a lot of officers came and talked to me, and they're like, you have some college hours, maybe you should consider going to the officer field, and that's ultimately what I did. But that was a great learning experience for me because 4 years later when I go to Iraq, I'd already had that going away from home moment. It was sad at the time. When I went back the second time, it was easier to kind of put my arm around the guys and keep their heads up when they were feeling down, because I had a lot of young soldiers. It was their first time away from home and going
Right.
to a tumultuous area.
Right. So that experience when you were young helped you when you were in Iraq,
Oh, yeah.
obviously.
Definitely.
You've been home for about 3 years now.
Yes, sir.
And but you plan on a deployment going back sometime between next summer and the summer after that. Is
Yes,
that
sir.
right? Well, talk about that.
Just the way the state of affairs are and the way the Texas Army National Guard is, it's your dwell time or your time at home usually isn't more than 3 or 4 years. And currently there's lots of soldiers from the state of Texas that are deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. As a company commander, I've given up my fair share of soldiers that have deployed in recent months or will deploy this summer, and I'm in that same boat. They need soldiers. And my take on it is I'm a single, or I don't have any kids, or I'm not married yet, and so I'd rather take their place. That's such a burden and such a hard time on families to lose a loved
Sure.
one, and so I'd like to do it. Now while I'm young, while I'm single and don't have any children, to take on that responsibility. So I try to
Right.
put my name in the pot, and even if my name doesn't go in the pot, it'll be put in there anyway by someone else for a brigade headquarters.
Right. And your next deployment, you figure, will be somewhat safer.
Yes, sir.
Right.
You'll probably be as a staff officer working, within a compound. As we talked about, I went all over Iraq, from Mosul to Tikrit to Fallujah to Ramadi, all over the country. Got to see it all. Whereas this next deployment as a staff officer, I'll probably just be in one building, have a 12-hour shift, day in, day out, and
Right.
very monotonous, but still has its reason for being there.
Besides being on reserve duty now as National Guard duty, talk a little bit about that and also what you're doing. You're teaching over at Texas A&M.
Yes, sir. I have my National Guard duty. Actually, I have drill this weekend. I'll drive up to Abilene early Saturday morning after the basketball game. And we'll have, we train for your wartime mission. That's what we do on the weekends. During the week, I'm a teacher, work over in the Kines department, teaching Kines 198s, 199s, health and fitness courses. I have 11 courses, work day, Monday through Thursday, 8 to about 5:15, 5:30. That takes up a lot of time. It's my full time. But the thing is, I take a lot of stuff from the military and apply it to my job. Make sure that, especially with the physical fitness stuff, to give my students best course they can have. A lot of them kind of say that they're expecting kind of a blow-off course.
Right.
Some teachers just kind of let them come in and work out, and I put them through the grinder. I take them out and roll around the grass a little bit, and let them have a little fun and see what it's like. And ultimately, at the end of the semester, they like it. They're like, thanks for making me work. Thanks for, they lose a lot of weight, get in shape, and it makes me feel good.
Mark, we have just about a minute and a half left, and I don't want to drag you into getting too political on this, but I heard a story this morning, as a matter of fact, that in the month of November here, 2008, there were 7 American casualties in Iraq. Those are tragic, certainly. In November of 2007, there were nearly 30.
Right.
Something's working over there.
Definitely. I think General Petraeus, who I had a lot of involvement with during our mission, he had a good plan. The surge, I think it worked. I think insurgent forces are kind of learning their lesson and backing off, and I think they're starting to try to focus on other areas. And I believe that General Petraeus, General Odierno, and Secretary Gates have a great plan, and I think they're in the right direction, definitely.
Indeed. Good luck to you, and thank you very much for your service. It's been a pleasure having you here. It was just a fascinating job. You got to be around a lot of interesting people, and it's something that you will have a family someday, and you'll be able to tell them about,
Oh,
right?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And show them all these pictures. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you.
It was indeed a multifaceted job, providing security and planning in Iraq whenever a VIP visited. It's a job you don't hear much about, and that's exactly the way it's supposed to be. They're doing their job then. We salute and we thank Aggie grad Captain Mark White for his service then, now, and upon his future return to Iraq. I'm Tom Turbeville. Join us next time on Veterans of the Valley.
In honor of the veterans who have served our country, both past and present, First National Bank, a Franklin family community bank, proudly sponsors Veterans of the Valley. Since 1862, First National has provided local decision-making and accessibility, as well as banking products and services to Brazos Valley citizens.